But one of the things that I always introduce to this space is, what is the greater intention? Like, is it to live from a place that feels relaxed and safe? Is it to be present in your day-to-day life? Is it to feel a sense of ease and peace in relationship to others, right? What is the greater intention? Because what that ends up doing is, our words are powerful, our words are directive. So it starts to open up possibility. It starts to open up opportunity. And especially when we hold it in a safe container, like a session like that, this field of energy and awareness that we're all connected to, it's intelligent in its own right, it's loving, it's benevolent. It begins, it's like it hears it. And so it starts to bring up just the right experiences so that that intention can be realized.
Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser, and this week my guest is Felicia. She is an initiator of transformation. She takes a radical stand for all beings awakening to their true nature and authentically living their truth into the world. Through a devoted exploration of the human experience, she artfully weaves together the worlds of attachment system, repair, developmental healing, somatic coaching, business energetics, and spiritual awakening to optimize human potential and consciously create life in alignment to the soul's purpose. Her approach is rooted in the principle of direct experience, and where she intuitively guides people into connection with their own inner sense of knowing, body wisdom, and the unified field of infinite intelligence. I'm so excited to have Felicia here. Everybody, please welcome Felicia. Hi. I love her. So I met Felicia recently at an event. We sat next to each other and we just like connected. And I'm actually going to start working with her. And I'm so excited to start doing some like somatic healing. So Felicia, let's talk about your journey. How did it all begin?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me into this space. I have been looking forward to this. I also felt when we first met, I feel deep connection with you, and being able to just share space and have a conversation is, it feels really fun to me. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited for this conversation, and for everybody who is listening. You guys are going to get so much out of this. I know you will.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah, so let's just dive right in. It's interesting because every time I tell my story, it feels like it's almost like there's a new iteration that comes through, just depending at what angle you're looking at it from. Because there's never really like a distinct moment where everything is different. At least for me, it was like there were many moments like that, and there continues to be many moments like that. So if I were to break it down, I would say there was life as the version of myself before I started going through a spiritual awakening experience, or journey rather, and a journey of embodiment as well. And there's so many different facets that includes, but to just give you an idea of contrast from what life is now to what life is then, in the hope that somewhere in this it can offer some guidance, something that's supportive to any of the people listening here, then that would be incredible. So I'll start with that. The first thing that comes to mind is, if I were to look back on both when I was younger, like growing up, and into my early adult years, like through high school and in college, and even into some of my like early 20s, anyone who knew me then, if you were to ask them, like, what is Felicia like, they would probably tell you that I'm like a pretty positive person, that I'm like bubbly and social and outgoing. And while all of those things are true, and I feel like there's parts of that that are my personality, there are parts of that is my soul essence, at the time, it felt like that also became those, like that demeanor, that way of being, was a way to protect myself and a way to keep parts of myself really isolated that had been through some pretty hard things and were holding a lot of really challenging emotion and isolation and in separation. So for me, I was pretty high functioning.
Yeah.
Like, I stayed busy all the time, and I was very good at managing time. I was very good at holding a lot of juggling pieces. That was just part of my way.
Mhm.
I was really good at school, right? I played sports. I had a social life. I had leadership positions. There was always something to do. And if you'd asked me then, I would not have changed that. I loved that. I was always trying to plan trips for my friends and I love to travel. I love to have experiences. And somehow, like, I did it all. I managed to do all of it. Like, I like living life, right?
Yeah.
And so if anyone had challenged that or like said there's another way, like, I could have argued with so many valid reasons why, like, things were working well enough my way. But what I didn't realize until things started to really heat up over time, and life circumstances start to be these mirrors to what's happening into in your internal world, it starts giving you opportunities to go inward. And sometimes those circumstances and situations get really loud.
Yeah.
can be can be really harsh. And
Yes.
so what I learned about myself in later years is that I had such a strong capacity to intellectualize life, to be
Mm.
able to rationalize and give you these like really deep explanations and even philosophical like perspectives on how things work the way they work and how people act the way that they do. I've always been really introspective in that way. But
Yeah.
what I didn't know is that that was also a means to avoid coming into my emotions, to
Mm.
actually living a life where I could feel and be real, which was with what I was feeling internally. So, and not just that, but I feel like when we get stuck in this place of numb in our emotions or our emotional body, and we live so much from an intellectual space,
Yeah.
it's like we're cutting ourselves off from a depth, right? So I kind of got stuck in this perpetual loop of like silent resentment and frustration, but I wasn't actually feeling the level of like grief and heartbreak that was underneath that I'd been carrying my whole life. And at the same time, I wasn't allowing myself to feel a deep sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, bliss, joy, love. There's a cutting off, and it
Yeah.
worked well enough, right? For a good amount of time until it didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could totally relate because sometimes I get into those modes where it's like I just want to read one book after another and I want to like learn so much, but I'm not really dealing with why I am seeking, like people, use alcohol, drugs, sex, food. You could also use reading books or taking courses or going to seminars to
Totally.
just continually learn and to not feel what you're really trying to escape.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a name for it. What is it? It's like information
Overload.
overload or something.
Yeah.
Information addiction. And I definitely have been guilty of that at
Yes.
points in my life. And it's like it adds up, it builds. I used to get panic attacks all the time.
Mm.
And I never knew why, because sometimes there wasn't even anything that you could
Going
point
on.
to and be like, oh, this thing happened. I'm reacting to it. I'm overwhelmed. I'm having a panic attack. They would just come out of nowhere. And
Mm.
so I've explored that later down the line now on the other side of awakening and inner work and all of that. And what I found is it's like so much had just been like bubbled up internally that my body and my nervous system couldn't actually hold it anymore. So it would come up through these moments where like it's easy to like call something a panic attack. We label it. Our culture knows what that is. So in some
Yeah.
ways it's permissioned. And that was the way that I dealt with my my feelings and the
Yeah.
backlog of emotional burden and overwhelm is like that. And of course, as you can imagine, that's pretty disruptive to your life, right?
Exactly. When you're having a panic attack and you have no explanation as to why this is happening to you. And like you said earlier, you've been storing it for so long, and some of us do. We're really good at like repressing the emotion, just keep going forward. Type A personality I am, where it's just like, let's just do, and get through the day without having to deal with our emotions, because we don't have time to have a emotional breakdown, right? We don't have time to sit with our feelings and process it. You just want to keep going, but your body is still like holding on to it.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is a good segue into like somatics and body intelligence and wisdom, which is something I learned along the way, and something like one way that I support my clients now with is how to actually heal the body and tune into our own wisdom, like the wisdom that this body carries. And there's a lot of ways it adapted to protect our hearts and actually to protect our nervous systems from being too overwhelmed, that we can come into healthy relationship with. We can actually come into a state of appreciation and honoring for all of those adaptive strategies that our body has used to survive, essentially, to get
Yeah.
through hard moments, right? And it's such a key piece of the puzzle to me, because on the other side of that, it's like we can actually open into not living from survival, but living from our hearts and in connection to something greater than us. And to me, it's like that comes with guidance. Some people will call it divine guidance. It comes with a feeling of like compassionately being supported by something that's bigger than us. It comes with a feeling of safety, and there's so many elements. And really what I'm pointing to is I use the vocabulary, I use the word the field. Other people might point to it as like God, spirit, source, right? Source intelligence, whatever your word is. I've always loved the word the field. It's the way that I connect to it, because it's like it's easier to imagine that you're moving through a field, right? A field is carrying you. Sometimes words can come with charge. So sometimes those words will activate a feeling of separation or something outside of us, something that, how could we possibly be in connection to that? So the field is
Mhm.
sort of my entryway into an experience of God, an experience of being in unification with that, not being separate from it, but actually being an embodiment of that, being a like a wave in the ocean and the ocean itself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How did you like discover somatic healing?
Mm. Um, okay, let me take you back. Because there was a shifting point in my life when this whole world opened up. Somatic healing was one part of it. You could like it was healing on so many different levels. It was learning how to heal developmentally, like learning how to see that when we were younger, there's stages of development and there's different needs we have, and often those needs aren't met because our parents don't have the capacity, or they didn't learn through their own parents, and all the way back down the line, right?
Yeah.
So that's one element of healing, is like contacting our inner child parts and getting their needs met, or creating a repair and actually digesting some of the traumatic experiences that we've had when we were little, because our bodies hold it, they carry
Yeah.
it, right? And then it wreaks havoc in our body, and it also influences the decisions that we make, how we move through the world, the people that we attract, right? Everything we're in relationship to essentially is impacted and influenced by any unprocessed or any undigested emotional experiences or memories from our past, until we actually address it. So that's a lot of the somatic work that I do with people, is teaching them how to come into healthy relationship with their body's wisdom, so that that process can naturally happen. It's not a fighting, pushing against. There's a way to do it where the whole experience is held with ease and with compassion and love and support, so
Yeah.
that you don't have to live in that struggle anymore. And that struggle internally doesn't have to translate to our life, to struggle in our life. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It totally makes sense. I just recently discovered somatic healing from a different guest that was on the podcast, and I was like, I've never even heard of it. Like, to be able to like heal the parts of us in our body that is still holding the wounds of our childhood, because I grew up in a very toxic environment. And so sometimes I'm like, why am I feeling like this when there is nothing going on? But I know that my inner child is always in that fight or flight mode because that's the way it learned to survive, right? The little kid inside of me learned to survive that. And so sometimes I'll have anxiety and I'm like, my husband will catch me breathing, like doing these breathing exercises, and he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I'm just having anxiety." "What's wrong?" "Well, why are you having anxiety?" I'm like, "I
Mhm.
don't know." It's just happening, and I just need to breathe through it, like I have taught myself to breathe through it and to just say simple mantras to get my brain out of the fear-based thoughts.
When it's interesting, it sounds like as you're saying mantras, you're giving yourself a pathway to calm down and actually come into a deeper experience of regulation in your body, right? You're naturally using your breath. So to me, I hear that and it's like, oh, something intuitively in you is allowing you to move from like looping and worry in the mind, right? Or the mental body. And it's actually bringing you down into the physical body, into the emotional body, be
Yes.
able to say, hey, there's some attention that's needed down here. Like, come be with me down here, right?
Yes. And that's hard when you're going through that anxiety or when you're stressing out or when your mind is like going a million miles an hour to the death zone, where it goes into like the everything's going to fall apart zone. It's hard to bring yourself back to the present moment because
Mm.
you're so stuck in the past or in the future that like I'm constantly telling myself, just breathe through it to get
Mm.
yourself back to the present moment. I'm still like on my own journey of healing, and I can't wait till I've scheduled a session with Felicia. I'm actually going to drive down to San Diego, so like I'm excited to like learn more about somatic healing because I want to get my body in a place where it knows it's safe and it's no longer in the past.
I'm so excited for you to come down. I'll add to that. To me, somatic healing actually goes hand in hand with awakening, like awakening to our true nature and what and who we actually are in wholeness. Because often when people come in, it varies, but we all have something that we're like, man, this is the way things are, and I wish it wasn't, right? Or this is what I want to shift or what I want to heal. And so that's a starting point. It's one starting point. But one of the things that I always introduce to the space is, what is the greater intention? Like, is it to live from a place that feels relaxed and safe? Is it to be present in your day-to-day life? Is it to feel a sense of ease and peace in relationship to others, right? What is the greater intention? Because what that ends up doing is, our words are powerful, our words are directive. So it starts to open up possibility. It starts to open up opportunity. And especially when we hold it in a safe container, like a session like that, this field of energy and awareness that we're all connected to, it's intelligent in its own right, it's loving, it's benevolent. It's like it hears it. And so it starts to bring up just the right experiences so that that intention can be realized. And
Yeah.
sometimes we hear that and it's easy to go into like, okay, great, the intention is set, right? Why aren't things changing? Because we all get stuck in that at some point along the way. And what I always like to bring in is, like, in order to recognize what we are in wholeness and to really embody our intentions and live that into reality, it's also bringing awareness to the shadows, to the places that were hidden, to the places we might not want to go or haven't had the capacity to go because um, we haven't been shown or felt these signals of really it being safe to go there.
Yeah.
Because so much of these inner child parts, they're frozen in time. So there's a story subconsciously that if I go there, if I really like throw my hands up in the air and just let what is arising within me arise, whether that's fear, terror, something, then all hell might break loose,
Yeah.
because those thoughts are coming from a child part. And when we were children, we actually, like, we needed somebody to be there. Like, biologically, our nervous systems needed safety, groundedness, support, care, compassion from something outside of us to let us know that we can build that capacity within ourselves and to show us where it actually exists within ourselves. But if those got skipped when we were younger, which it did for many of us, right? We don't live in a world of enlightened parents yet. So when we grow up, now those child parts that are frozen in us haven't actually registered that in this present moment, our bodies have the ability to handle moving through and expressing a lot of what was hard to touch into when we were younger or even on our own. That's one of the benefits of working with somebody. And what opens up from there, I found it's like there's a paradigm shift that happens because
Yeah.
we can go from like wanting to get somewhere, like, I know what's wrong, I want it to not be this way, and here's what I want. How do I get there? Or how do I develop that skill set? Whether it's confidence or feeling safe or abundance or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so rather than like the paradigm that shifts is rather than trying to get there, as we go in and heal, we create the right environment for healing to happen. We build a relationship to ourselves with kindness, sometimes through the reflection of others to show us what that really feels like. What happens is it's like wherever we had an identity that was stuck, or another way to say it is like wherever our consciousness was sort of balled up
Mhm.
within our being and stuck, it begins to diffuse. And when that happens and it begins to diffuse, what actually comes through is what we are, the truth
Yes.
of our nature. It just is what we are. And so we start to naturally experience ourselves in the here and now, in the present moment, not outside of ourselves, as exactly who and what we wanted to be when we were stuck within that isolated, painful identity. So
Mm.
for me, like one of the big ones that happened is I started to feel a sense of belonging. And
Mm.
that's something that I deeply craved, and to be understood and seen and loved, even in like the hard moments. And what I realized is that already existed within me, that feeling of belonging as I went through and healed these parts, got support, and started to touch into this greater field of energy and awareness. It's like all of those qualities naturally exist
Mhm.
already. It's just they got covered up, right?
I know, it's crazy because I had a interview with a channeler, someone who could channel, and I was kind of talking to her about like how I feel like everyone has this beautiful light within us that like when babies are born, they have this beautiful light, you know, they're trusting, they're loving, there's no hate or anger and bitterness in a baby, right? But as we get older, it seems like the people that are raising us or the people that we're around kind of like smother our fire with their own fears, with their own insecurities, with their own limitation. And the channeler was telling me, she goes, no, our fire is always there. It's not dimmed or it's not smothered. It's just covered up. You know, like it's just like you said, it's just kind of like there's all these things holding it um that we just need to like let go of, you know. But I think most of the time it's that fear of our own trying to protect ourselves. Like, I imagine my little inner child, like, just trying to protect herself from the abuse from the toxic environment, that she's still like this, even though I'm no longer in that environment. Oh, I'm getting emotional. You know what I mean? Like, I'm no longer there, but my body still feels like I'm there.
Mm.
I'm getting emotional just thinking about it because I think all of us have to like really dig deep into our bodies because even though intellectually I know that I'm not there, my body still senses that I'm there, you know?
Can I offer something for you?
Yes.
Mm.
uh,
I just appreciate like how open and real and vulnerable you are with your experience. And right now, because you're speaking from like this really young part inside,
yeah.
wondering if you notice that we're in a shared space together
Mhm.
and you're safe, like really see if you can take that in. Notice that you made it through that experience. It was so hard that really happened, and you made it right here with you.
I
Yeah.
did make it. I made it out of there.
Yeah. So as you feel that, it's like your body is also getting those signals.
Mm.
Yeah. And then you can even take a moment and like just feel your feet on the ground.
My feet don't reach the ground.
Feel your
I have to put
body
them
on
on a little thing.
yeah.
A little stool. I have to put them on my stool, but yes.
Yeah, just feeling where your body touches the chair. There you go. You notice how that shifted something?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. It's crazy because it's been a long journey for myself, and I coach other people too, but sometimes I still know that there's so much work to do. There's years. And I tell some of my clients too, like they're like, oh, I've done this. It's not over yet. And it's like, I think our healing journey will be with us forever. I don't think there's ever going to be a time in my life where I will be completely whole until I'm on the other side. Because I think the healing journey is unraveling years and years and years of trauma. It's not just going to be turned off like 1 or 2 years of healing. I think it's going to be a long journey. And I think I'm in the place where I'm no longer the same person in the beginning of the journey, but I still feel like I will always be working on myself and evolving and growing and learning. And I think the healing journey never stops.
I think there's something humbling about hearing you say that you're willing to go in and do the healing work and show up, right? To be able to keep unraveling that. And to me, it makes you a better coach, right? It makes me a better coach and a better healer. It makes those people who are supporting others or in service, it makes it a more trustworthy space because it's not pretending that everything is perfect,
Yeah.
right? Or that there's this end all be all moment where like nothing wrong, nothing bad will ever happen again. There are no challenges.
Yeah.
I appreciate like the humble nature of what you're bringing to the space.
Oh,
I really deeply honor that. And I'll share from my experience. What I found is there were a good amount of years where I swung the pendulum so far into the world of healing. I was like, okay, I recognize now that there's impact when I'm real with myself and I go into some of these dark places. And so I went in like hardcore. I was like, everything. Like, I
yeah.
want to know what's there. I'm ready. Like, I don't care what I discover, like, throw me in the fire because something in me was like, in order to be able to rest deeper in what I really am in my true nature, I know that it's not suffering. I have that knowing. And so I was like, if this is part of the pathway for more of my conscious mind to be able to live from that place of like what true nature actually is, like put me in, I'm ready. And I
Yeah.
did that. And what I found was there was a certain moment when the pendulum started to swing. And it wasn't like a black or white moment of like, I'm just getting in there and I'm feeling everything that I suppressed and held into. That was an element of it. But along the way, and then eventually the pendulum swung more out of that and into what we might call awakening. So to me, it's like we can actually shift our vantage point from where we're healing from. So initially, when we're starting to go into the body and really unpack everything we've suppressed and create more emotional fluidity, it feels like it's everything. It can. That's one way. It's like it can feel like it's just taking over. That there's so much there. There's a lot happening. So to me, it's always an indicator that like, oh, we're merged inside of a part of ourself that has experienced hardship in some way. But the more you get a reprieve from that, like it's something digests and suddenly you start to feel a little bit better. I always bring people's awareness to that moment because it builds a muscle that isn't about just processing and like having the capacity to go in and feel, but it's about training our bodies to actually feel comfortable feeling good to
Yeah.
feel comfortable, feeling grounded and safe, because we have protectors or protective survival elements that will come in and try to look for what could go wrong,
Yeah.
right? So the more we actually rest in feeling good, feeling grounded in our bodies, it settles and soothes that voice that's like, either look for what could go wrong, sabotage, whatever. It starts to naturally subside on its own the more attention we start to place on the moments where we do feel peace, we do feel groundedness, we do feel stability, we do feel safety and connection with another. And so
Mhm.
that begins to grow. And as that grows, what ends up happening is then when another life experience happens that's triggering, or say there's another layer we're ready to unlock within ourselves to heal, rather than having to go completely in to merge with that experience of pain or deep emotion, we can keep a foot on the ground in well-being, and our body feels that too. So we can actually simultaneously experience peace and well-being in our body while we're feeling a hard emotion. And it
Yeah.
happens at the same time. So for me now, when I'm processing something, there's actually like an element of pleasure in it sometimes. Not always, because it's not to say that it doesn't hurt, but I've come to feel like I've a relationship with emotion as energy. And so
Yes.
if I can feel energy deeply and my body knows that it's not going to be the end of me and take me out, which I've done a lot of work on, then it's like you can feel even terror in your body, and it digests, it metabolizes, and it passes through. And that's just now life force available for you to put into your passions in life,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I love that. I wanted to use my life force for that. I definitely want to use my life force for that. Earlier, when you were talking about an awakening, I was talking to another woman who talks about, like, your awakening and your steps of like your awakening soul. And she talks about like when someone starts to awaken to who they truly are and what their purpose here on earth is, it usually starts with like some catastrophe. Like it's always like the dark night of the soul that has to happen for you to ask those empowering questions like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Do you believe that that's something that really has to happen to everyone for them to really start their awakening path, or no?
I think that that's one way. And for some individuals, that might be the way, because sometimes our protective parts of ourself can be stubborn
Yeah.
for good reason.
Yes.
I don't believe it's the only way. In fact, I know that it's not the only way. I believe that there's so much power in our intention, and it doesn't need to get to like the bottom of the barrel, like the worst of the worst, for us to make a decision for something different to happen. Now,
Mm.
it takes that for some people because their belief system is so oriented to life is hard, life is a struggle, it's never going to work out for me, this can't work out for me. It's so habituated. It doesn't actually mean that it's the truth. It just means that it's been habituated. And so often people won't lean into a decision of like, show me something different. I'm done. Show me something different. I'm ready. It's the decision that we make that sets us up on that path of awakening, or that path to get to know who we are in our truest self and through our purpose. You can make that decision in this moment right now. It doesn't have to get that bad. It's the gift of free will. It's just that most people choose not to unless they're confronted enough, because there is a safety and familiarity. As
Yeah.
much as like we don't want to be in struggle, right? If it's familiar, our survival system might attach to that and say, I don't know what thriving might feel like. It's not conscious, right? It's subconscious.
Yeah.
But the way to cut through is just to make the decision right now to know yourself on a deeper level and to walk through the world from your true nature, from your heart.
Oh, I love that. Okay, Felicia, as we wrap up this episode, what would be your nugget of wisdom for anyone who is listening or watching on YouTube? If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe. What would you say is your nugget of wisdom for anyone who is listening?
You know, I like to keep things simple, like simplicity, especially lately, has been a good compass for me. So, my nugget of wisdom would be that transformation, like true lasting transformation, can only happen in the present moment. So if you find yourself in a thought loop, like you're reminiscing on the past, or whether that's positive or negative, or you're hoping for a different future, or you're projecting a negative future and hoping it won't happen, all of those are not in the present moment. So come back to the present moment, really become like intimate and curious with what's happening in the here and now. Because if we're in a past or future loop, there's often actually some worry in the present moment that is calling for our hearts, that is calling for our awareness, and it's calling for our compassion. And we bring ourselves back to the present moment, we're giving the natural intelligence of our bodies, that natural wisdom, we're giving it a chance to unwind itself. We're actually creating the right environment for to allow ourselves to come back into a coherent state of flow and collaboration with this universal field of intelligence.
Yes, I love it. I love it. How can my audience find you and book a session? And I can't wait to tell you guys how my session goes.
Yes, totally. So easiest way to connect with me right now is to follow me on my Instagram. It's Felicia Gualda. If you're hearing this later, it might be Felicia Isabella by then. I'm in a whole I'm in a whole thing right now with names.
And do you have a website? You do have a website, don't
I
you?
do. Yeah. My website is feliciagualda.com. So check me out there. There's a couple of cool things on my website that points to some of the things we've been talking to you and really empowers you to get started on all of this. And then the second thing I wanted to share is that I'm actually going to be starting my own podcast this month. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so tune in because we're going to be talking about all things healing, awakening, especially if you are a person who's wanting to live your purpose into the world, whether that's through entrepreneurship or whatever your art is.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.